I am Captain Logan, and this is day 232 of Spawn Year. I am trying desperately to conserve my power, knowing that with every astounding new ability I discover, that much more Mountain Dew has been depleted. There's no telling when I'll have the chance to replenish my supply again. Tidy Adam West so far has consistently appeared every 7 days, which seems to be precisely the amount of time it takes to drain a single can, between the energy it takes to sit in this chair, muster up the motivation to contaminate my intellect, consume this oh-so-compelling literary material, and put the rest of that sweet, glowing green lifeblood on the page. The last time I saw him, I drank 4 cans, so who knows when I'll see him again. One can understand why I might not spend a lot of my time doing jumping jacks or push-ups these days, besides the obvious limitations of such a bulky, heavy, and spiky costume. Seriously, I'll be the first to admit how supremely rad it is to have superpowers. I nearly jumped for joy that first time I sent a Spawn comic to its well-deserved oblivion. I'm starting to think the real reason Spawn was so unmotivated in the days when he rarely left the alleys was just because his stupid costume was so cumbersome. You sit a few days in a man's cape, and you develop a newfound appreciation for him. But today I found myself sympathizing more with Wanda than with Al. Well over half a year here, and on page 2 of a comic book I read, "I can't take it. It never ends." Yep, that about sums it up. But if I'm right and this madness is over for me on day 365, I've got it way better than Wanda and Terry. Reading all this outlandish, confusing rubbish is infuriating enough. Imagine being Spawn's widow. She and Terry are called out to the cemetery in the middle of the night because Al's body has gone missing. Okay, that sounds like a corpse buried 6 feet under was unfortunately misplaced. Let me start over. Al's body appears to have been dug up and stolen. Yay for useful, tangible proof to clue the reader into actual story details, and it's done without a spoon-feeding narration box and as a way to logically resolve the cliffhanger from last issue. Meanwhile, a Wiccan named Nyx has vague psychic flashes about Al returned to Earth, rendered in her mind's eye with all the cliché religious imagery someone might naturally visualize when thinking of angels and devils. She feels something is gravely out of place in this universe because Al, who we can be fairly confident now in assuming has reclaimed his old body, somehow returned to its living state from when it was filleted alive, is missing his shadow. What Nyx doesn't know is that unlike Peter Pan's shadow, this one goes around ripping off people's skin. Nyx matter-of-factly states in her journal that shadows are necessary to the makeup of the human soul. This girl finds herself helplessly compelled to write about Spawn in a journal. Instantly relatable character. And she makes an obvious metaphor into a literal truth. The shadow is our dark side. She implies that while in our shadow resides our primal instinct, without it we wouldn't have many of our most desirable qualities either. Specifically, she points to creativity, intuition, and protective instincts. I can see some of those things equated with, or at least related to darkness, but if all those traits are found in the shadow, what's left for the body, for the intrinsically good part of people? Just fear and compassion? There's a bit of a Star Trek The Enemy Within message here, and while I like and even agree with the notion that a whole person maybe requires both good and bad impulses, and then the discipline to strike a healthy balance between them, I'm not sure about going so far as to saying survival instincts and creativity are inherently evil in origin. With all this talk of primal urges, it really feels like we're throwing those poor woodland creatures under the bus again. I guess that's why they have red eyes. Anything without human reason or intellect must be evil. I wonder if Spawn could have fed on the energies of orcas and kangaroos, but I'm getting off track. Nyx uses a spell involving following the revolution of the moon to piece together Very loosely, spawns rise and fall from the throne of Malbolgia, life, death, and rebirth. She discovers Spawn's overwhelming necroplasmic energy and goes to find Al, conveniently confronting him just as the Spawn costume lures him to it at the old throne, and he's running away from it. Wait, Starbucks coffee? I guess that's sort of a clever way to avoid product placement and to use a real-ish brand. Nyx does seem like she might be a Starbucks kind of girl, and a cup of coffee is, I guess, sort of a Starbucks. But if it's not called Starbucks, why does it still have stars on it? Okay, focus, Cap, focus. Al doesn't seem to have lost his aggressive nature. He grabs a board to hit Nyx with when she comes around the corner, and I think he's capable of using it since the first thing he did when he came back to Earth was knock over a policeman. And is Hulgwyn really taking this idea to its furthest extreme, making the shadow literally a person's dark side and figuratively, or maybe also literally, implying that Al's is Letha and he's only a complete, intuitive, creative, protective, and instinctual being with the costume? I get that it's symbiotic and they probably can't live without each other, even if Bulgy-Cog thinks he can change the nature of a Hellspawn. I'm not surprised about more of a "you can't run from the destiny you chose" message crammed down my throat, but I sure hope I'm not expected to swallow that Al is a better person as a Hellspawn, that he somehow found that balance between good and evil and has to rediscover it. That's not the Spawn I've read about. At the end, Terry goes to his old place of employment to get help tracking down Spawn, and the government, behind Terry's back, goes to a feral Jason Wynn. Suffice it to say, he still has a shadow. I'm not riveted and engrossed, but I don't altogether hate this one. There's a genuinely touching scene where Al eats old moldy popcorn on an overcast day with tears of joy in his eyes as he watches children playing. It's neat that his perfect day wouldn't look remotely perfect to someone from the outside. I'm also surprised Wynn's back already, since his last appearance felt like a mad dash to a victim from Spawn's status quo.
Well, well, well. If it isn't Mr. Too Chicken to Die. How's hell treating you, Captain Spawn?
I really need to get these powers under control.